Welcome to episode 92 of the Hard Truth About B2B e-commerce. I'm your co-host Isaiah, and I'm back with Tim on almost. I was gonna say we have sun, but we don't have sun. It's like trying in our. I don't know where it is for you in New York, but
it's almost spring here. But happy St. Patrick's Day. I know the people will hear this after the holiday, but I'm wearing a little bit of green today, and the parade's in New York and people are going crazy for the holidays. So it's a big thing. I think they said it's the 262nd consecutive St. Patrick's Day parade in New York this year. Incredible, right? Just incredible. So I want to just take a brief pause to insert our sponsor mentions, and then I'm going to throw it back to Isaiah. Hello, everyone. I'd like to give you a word from our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Balance. Balance is a B2B e-commerce payment solution that works well for you and for your buyers. It offers a seamless one-click checkout for almost any payment method, including ACH, wire, checks, cards, even terms. It's used by leaders in B2B e-commerce, and it's as easy as buying a shirt from Amazon. Check them out at getbalance.com. Book a session and tell them what your needs are. They are the first dedicated payment platform for B2B e-commerce, 100% tailored to your needs. Thanks again to our sponsor, Balance. Our next sponsor is TradeCentric. TradeCentric transforms the way businesses transact by enabling punch-out, purchase order, and invoice automation solutions for over 3,000 companies around the world. Uniquely positioned at the intersection of e-commerce and e-procurement, TradeCentric helps B2B buyers connect with suppliers and automate payment, procurement processes to drive greater efficiency and user adoption of streamlined systems. Learn more at tradecentric.com. Thank you to our sponsors. I do have one shout out this week, as a tradition we've had for a while. A few people reached out to me, but some of those folks have reached out before. One of the new people who has been listening to our podcast is a guy named Doug Kennedy, who I've met on LinkedIn. So hello, Doug. Tell all your friends to dive in, and thank you to all of our listeners. So Isaiah, who is our wonderful guest today?
Yeah. I think we were introduced a while back, and it took us a while to coordinate via email. And I'm going to try not to butcher your name, but I'll do my best. Excited to introduce. Is it Jouke de Vries, or how do you say it the right way? Because I don't think I'm saying it the right way.
No, it's a Dutch name. It's not too easy, I think, for foreigners. But it's Jouke de Vries. But that's well. As I said, I'm a Dutchman, and
you're not our first, guest from the Netherlands. So
no,
it seems like a common trend. You guys obviously know what you're doing with e-commerce, and there's a lot of smart people there. So tell us about. I mean, you've been in e-commerce. Is it most of your career, or did you have a career before e-commerce? Or is it
no, basically day one I started working was in the e-com space. So I think it was more than 20 years now. I'm active in the e-commerce domain. Well, that's very much B2B, but B2C as well.
Pretty much when e-commerce started in like the late 90s, right? I mean, Amazon and eBay, right? It was like there wasn't much.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, if we look at what I did in the past, and 20 years e-commerce. Started off as a software engineer myself, so just building these e-commerce sites back in the days using some traditional Microsoft technology back then.
More like custom sites, or kind of there was no real platform back then, kind of thing.
Well, it was real B2C, but it is all custom. So no platform to start off with, just building our from scratch. We were just building these e-commerce sites. Very interesting, but at some point, from technology, I moved on to more like development manager, architect roles. more supervising, designing the architects to the bigger, let's say, challenges, so to say. And then after that, I moved more into the product manager roles. I worked at Sana Commerce, as you know, as a B2B e-com platform for 15 years. I worked together with very closely with Arno Ham, who was also on this podcast a while back. Together, basically, we did the product management. He was more focused on, let's say, the commercial side of things. Myself was more focused on technology and the processes. So together we managed from basically nothing from scratch. We start building an e-com platform integrated with the underlying, let's say, Dynamics systems, SAP systems, and so we had basically nothing. We had no product, we had no customers, we had no partners, nothing. And then from I think 2007. We started building everything and trying to find customers, trying to find partners to sell our product, which is a very interesting journey to be part of. So that was great. But then I think 2015, I decided, well, I wanted to see a bit more of the world in terms of, I've always worked at the same company. So I think it was time for me to see how IT was done in other companies. So I moved on as freelancer and I took roles like product owner, consultancy roles in e-com to, in various companies. So from banks to, for example, Akzo Nobel is quite a big company. It's they are in the painting business, producer of paint.
This is Nobel of the Dynamite and the Peace Prize, correct? That's the
exactly.
Company. That's the company for Nobel. Yeah, I totally get it. That's great.
But it's quite a big company, I can tell you. I think it's 50 to 60,000 employees they have, so it's quite huge. Yeah. So, but I did a very interesting B2B project there. So that's, I think, for 3-4 years. So we built a quite extensive platform there. So very cool. At the moment, I'm more on a B2C commerce role, selling puzzle magazines, which is quite a different ballgame, I can tell you. But still interesting and a lot of challenges there. So that's me.
Yeah. So tell us about this journey and learning about B2B e-commerce. Because I assume when you started out, like all of us, you didn't really know, there's no school to learn B2B e-commerce. No one really knows what it was until you just kind of figure it out over time and you realize that there's a need in businesses. And you guys started pretty early in that world. Could you maybe talk a little bit about the evolution of that? It might be interesting to just hear where it started. Because I remember when I started, people were like, "Oh, we'll never," they don't even want to sell online. Probably when you started, just getting them to even sell online was hard. Probably, I'm guessing, right? Just because B2B was not a real thing online, really.
No, exactly. I think it was 2007, 2008 when within our company, a business development manager came up with the idea, or there was a customer asking for. They had a local ERP system, and they basically want to have a storefront on top of that where customers could see their own prices when they went through the catalog, etc. So that was the original requirement. And then this business development manager said, "Hey, let's just build this for this customer, but maybe that's a nice blueprint to reuse also for other customers who might have the same challenge or ideas there." So that's basically how it started off. To traditional B2C back in the days was, of course, you could see your product for a retail price, you could buy it, but having your own price based on your own terms and agreements, that was quite a new thing back then. And that's basically
to log in and see that online. Yeah,
exactly.
Did you get much pushback when you talk to the businesses, or where the businesses "Oh no, we don't want to put this online," or they were okay with it because it was specialized to their price contracts? Or
well, it's always quite sensitive, the price agreements they have with their customers. So there's always some, they feel a bit afraid, let's say, having this. Most often it's live data. So you have your real-time integration with ERP system, for example, where you have all your price logic, all your agreements with the customers. You're going to surface online. So they're a bit afraid that, are we really sure that only this specific customer can see his own price and it's not publicly for other customers to see, for example. So that's, but that's something to get through. And once they see this in action, they really start seeing the value of it. So yeah, that's good. That's a nice journey to experience. But yeah, I think it starts off with price, but I think another example is inventory, which is of course very important to service that online in a good way. Because yeah, for B2B, that's well, it's always important for e-commerce, but for B2B maybe even more, to make sure that well, what you sell you really can, or for what you promise online, you can really fulfill.
Yeah.
So that's
I
very
think there's a
important.
lot more embracing the change than there used to be. I mean, it really feels like there's been, a major shift, for me at least, in the last few years. Not everyone, of course, but I feel like a lot of people in B2B are embracing the change more. Do you think it's generational? Do you think it's because of the advent of like smartphones and mobile marketing and all these other things that have happened over the last few years? I mean, what do you think?
I think it's two-sided. So if you just zoom out a bit, well, like Isaiah was mentioning, so when we started off, for example, in 2008, 2009, a lot of companies, B2B companies, didn't have any online presence, or maybe they had like a brand site. That's about it.
Yeah, content
Ordering.
site, your site, yeah.
But now we're 15 years later, so the maturity of B2B e-commerce, of course, we're, let's say, in the second or third wave. So now you see companies moving on to, okay, they had a B2B e-commerce solution. They're now looking for a more mature or different technology. Maybe the business model has changed. So that, I think that's one part of it. And I think the other part is the customer side of things. So 10 years back, then most people were using desktops, of course, to order, or using phone even. I think that has now dramatically shifted more to more mobile usage. I already named in the introduction the example of the project I was on, Axel Nobel. So basically, we had a B2B e-commerce shops in 7 countries, and the customer were the painters, basically. So that were, well, small companies with let's say 1, 2, 3 brushes, as they call them, 1, 2, 3 painters. And when they ordered, so there was a lot of customer surveys were done there to see how they wanted to use, let's say, our tool or web shop. And basically how they use it was on their job. When, for example, they ran out of paint, they want to place an order on the spot. So they use mobile devices, and also they have, let's say, dirty hands of painting. So it should be, UX is very important there. You need some bigger buttons. It is easily pressable. Yeah. So these kind of examples, I think that these are.
Did you guys look at the like usage? Was it heavily mobile? Like you look to see like, oh, we're getting more mobile checkout. We got to optimize for this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was done, of course, with data analysis, but there was a lot of research done in that company, just reaching out to the customers, talk with them. What do they need? Do they understand?
I think a lot of that's missing, right? I think that there's almost like an arrogance, and this partly comes in from the US side, because I'm speaking biased, right? Like we work with mostly US merchants, and I think there's a little bit of an arrogance. And Tim, I think you mentioned this. We're like, oh, they're like, oh, we know our customers. Or I think it was Justin King, who they think they know their customers. But like when you really ask them what they really want and you really dive in, it's like, oh yeah, we just want like Amazon business. It's like, but they're like, no, it's fine. They like to call on the phone. They like to email. Like you get that answer sometimes still today.
You do, yeah.
with some B2B businesses. Like I talk to them all the time, and they know that e-commerce is coming, but I still think there's a reluctance or an arrogance that it's not what the customer wants as much as I think the customer really wants. Yeah. And I don't know if it's like, maybe it's the way you ask the customer or how you ask the customer, but I think that some of that is missing from like, there's just this gap of what the customer really wants and what the company.
Well, what I found, and see if you agree with this, Jouke. I mean, one of the things that I found that's really funny is I worked on a project recently with a company I can't name right now, but that company, it was hilarious. I was listening to what the internal people were saying, right? And they were telling me a story very similar to what Isaiah is saying. And then I said, well, I'm the outside party. I'm going to go your permission. I want to just talk to the customers directly. I want to interview them and I want to survey them, right? And once you start talking to all of these B2B clients, then they said exactly what you would expect. We want to use our mobile phones and we want to have everything as simplified as possible, and all of these sorts of things. And then I just presented it back to the business and they're like, oh, okay, we'll do that, right? But they had this layer where they wanted to say,
so actually I've been working on this at Trellis, and I think this is a company-wide problem, especially in B2B, is that most businesses aren't going to tell you the truth to your face in most like, let's say that Trellis is an agency, they don't really like us, and that it's not like we have 100% retention. There are clients that maybe aren't happy, right? You have hundreds of clients over years, like someone's going to be unhappy over time, right? But they're not going to like usually tell our project manager like, oh, we think you suck.
I hope not.
Like if you ask the project manager might be like, oh, things are going well, right? So like, and that's what I think is happening, especially at these like bigger companies, because like the customers aren't going to tell the people like directly that they're doing a bad job, right? Like, and so you almost have to like circumvent in a different way to get the real information, because and sometimes like I can do it at the owner level, because they might be like an honest conversation at the owner level, because you kind of break down that barrier. But it's not as simple as just like ask them directly, because I think sometimes they won't tell you the truth. And I don't know if you've seen that in your career, but that's something, I think that's something we see a lot in the US, where there's just like a lot of like just people.
Yeah, well, I think you're right there. So indeed, quite often if people, if they're not feel really helped, or they just get lost in an online experience, or let's say a bad experience, often that just goes by and
they'll go away, they'll never come back, right?
No, exactly. For B2B that's maybe slightly different if it's a recurring customer, but still I think the primary thing there is you want to hear if somebody is not let's say helped, or really or if there are troubles there. So, and there are a lot of ways to achieve that, of course, to hear or listen, or be at least in the conversation with this customer. So of course you could look at your data. That's of course one thing you can do, and you can then based on that do some analysis and guess what he thinks or what has happened there. Well, that's possible to a certain extent, and there are quite some interesting tools which are very useful there. One of them is what we use the current project I work on is Hotjar. It's a very interesting online service where you can really see, let's say, heat maps. You can see recordings of, let's say, the journey the customer is going through your website, and it's even pretty smart, so it can recognize if a lot of customers, let's say, click one specific button a lot of times or something. So if there is something not clear, or these kind of really detailed things, but it can really be very irritating if some text is not clear, or you don't understand any specifically what is on this in the content, for example. So that's one of the things you can start using, but I think you need like a few tools. So that's one. You can do some customer surveys. Of course, you need to be in close contact with the customer support team who are directly talking with the customers. Because what I find very interesting, what I sometimes do is just, again, on the current project I'm on, just look into the contact form submissions. What comes in? What do people ask, complain about? Or from that, you learn a lot firsthand from this customer. What do they experience and what troubles they have? So from there, you can very quickly figure out if there is a big problem. For example, we are in a subscription business. So we sell subscriptions. So we see, what I saw is a lot of people complain about, okay, where do I change my address for a subscription? That's just not clear for them where to do it. And of course, it's pretty irritating if you're moving to a new place and you cannot change your address there in a good way.
Yeah, it's a simple feature, right? It's a simple
exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I think you can plug in a lot of places to really listen to a customer and understand
I wonder what if it's maybe that B2B executives, and especially as they get bigger, they're maybe not close enough to the customer complaints, right? Maybe they're too far removed.
Yeah,
as
I
you
think
become a
it
bigger
depends
company,
a bit on the customer. So if you have like the bigger clients, of course, there's an account manager or sales rep who's in frequent contact with this customer. So I think there is less a problem. But probably if you have, let's say, a hand of smaller customers who are there without account manager or direct help, or you want to turn a prospect into a new customer, new to B2B customer. For those customers, I think it's very important to really have a conversation via all the technology which is there these days or services to really hear or you can also think about, let's say, welcome journeys. So that the moment a prospect signs up or wants to place a first order, that you have, let's say, something in your welcome process, that there is a personal contact, that you can really have somebody reaching out to this customer, asking how was your first experience, was everything clear, etc., to really learn how the journey is set up and if it's clear for this new customer.
Well, one of the things, and I think you just touched on this, but one of the things that people have talked about a lot, not just on our podcast, but in general, is that sometimes it's as simple as a 3-question survey going out every few months. It doesn't have to be very complicated, but you have to really make sure that you're being clear and general and getting as many responses as possible. Somebody I was working with, they were a little not unsure, let's say, of doing that. They're like, well, we don't really send surveys. What are they going to think? And I said, well, they're going to think that, why didn't you send the survey? That's what they're going to think is, why haven't you sent these before? And that's exactly what happened. They started sending them out and they got 3,000 responses on the first survey. And it blew their minds because they're like, well, we only have like 10 or 12,000 or whatever customers of a certain sort. So they were really surprised. And then now they do it regularly and they're always getting some insight about something and to improve or make easier, and it's helping them, right? That's what businesses need to do. It doesn't cost much money to start a lot of these processes.
Customer service, especially I think to your point at the smaller customer size, because there might be thousands of them and you're just not going to have the time to have like thousands of meaningful conversations, especially at like an executive level. Right. And so you kind of have to do some sort of survey or data aggregation method to figure it out.
Yep.
Right.
Well, it's also an interesting technique there is in your package, if you're going to ship it, just put in there, let's say, a survey, very low level, or maybe do it via QR code.
Yeah, there you go. Right in your product.
Easy.
Easy. I love that. Or in the order confirmation or post confirmation. Right. I mean, one thing that I think that B2B companies don't realize is I think that the sub 10 person companies, roughly, obviously it depends, but let's use that math for basics. Companies that are less than 10 employees, they pretty much operate like consumers. Like they don't have procurement. They just want to go on their phone. Maybe they get special pricing, but it's very simple. Like, give me a 20% discount because I'm a business and I don't want to pay retail. Like they want to operate almost like, my wife runs a little Airbnb business that I help her with. Like she buys everything online with some exceptions. And it's like, she doesn't have time to call up and like order supplies. Like she's doing it all online, right? She's buying home goods, furniture, but it's a business, and she's buying fairly significant volume when you add it all up, but she wants to buy basically like a consumer, but she's starting to get like the business accounts, like the business Wayfair account, the business Amazon account, the business Home Depot account, like some of these. And I think that there's like this huge market out there for these like 10, 20 person companies that just want this like self-service business. They basically want to be treated consumers with like almost like a membership. It's almost like they want like loyalty for being like a little bit more, premium than a normal consumer would be,
Yep. Yeah, and well, also I think like you said, I think that's something that's very visible these days. Is that B2B e-com is more and more inspired by B2C, especially these smaller companies. The way they shop, it's like like a consumer. That's also the treatment they want, and it's interesting to well, you can indeed look at how you can offer them a bit more. So like also if you, in case you want to upsell a bit more to these customers, so introduce like, if you want to become a premium customer, you have to do this and this to qualify for that, or to, well, there are a lot of ways you can work on that. And well, it's like for B2C, you have these kind of loyalty programs. You can have something similar. Of course, you call it differently for B2B, but these kind of models would also apply maybe to, and which is interesting to explore, to see what, of course, it depends on what kind of business you're in and what kind of products you sell. But
well, one other thing that, and I don't know if we've talked about this in the podcast before, but it's something that I've been watching kind of closely on the outside. A lot of smaller businesses, B2B, companies, let's say they're a manufacturer. I'll give you an example of a plumbing a supply business that I was looking at. They realized they had a lot of small plumbers who were buying supplies, and they wanted to cultivate the small business people. But they also realized that there were a lot of people that wanted to start plumbing businesses, but didn't really know how. So they set up training, online training programs.
Mhm.
And that's basically one of the ways in which they're getting new customers for their business.
Yeah, it's content marketing. It's a great marketing.
It's brilliant in a way, because it's like, it's not just the people of existing businesses. We're going to talk to you about starting your own business, and then you can buy stuff from
It's kind of like the Shopify model. Shopify is very smart about that. I want to I'll tie that back in, because they're very good about like, here's how to start an e-commerce business. Here's why, they're very focused on educating these entrepreneurs to start, because then they know they're probably going to use Shopify.
Yeah,
that's it. I just love that.
I mean, it makes sense for any supplier of a certain industry to facilitate that, because you want more plumbers to do more work so they can get more supplies, and it's good content marketing. But one barrier I see a lot, one of the technical, I know your background, you're a very technical guy in your background. I know you pretty diverse background and you do more than that. But one of the things I think Sana did really, really well was like tie directly to the ERP, show real-time pricing, real-time inventory. And I think that's a huge barrier that I see in B2B. Well, two things. I think B2B is interesting because most B2B companies that I come across have started before 2000. Like, it's kind of a scary thing in my mind. I don't know. I think we talked about this a little bit, Tim, with like Justin King, which is like, what's going to happen in 10 years when all these guys retire, and like everyone's like trying to be a TikToker and start like the VC backed cool businesses, and like there's no one starting the plumbing supply store. You know what I mean? Like, the Gen Z, they're even not younger than me now. Like, they're not starting the B2B. Like, I don't know many people that are like out there starting B2B businesses, like,
that's a good point. Yeah.
Manufacturing distribution standpoint. So, there's a long-winded, but I'll get to the point. Most of these companies have been around since before 2000, at least in the US. Like I said, we're obviously biased towards the US. I think you might see that in the Europe too. And what that means is they've all built around systems from the 90s to that Microsoft. I mean, a lot of these guys, they're on their third, fourth iteration of ERP. They might be on an older version. They might have not have upgraded to the newest version, and all their data, pretty much that ERP is their business. Like, the ERP, if the ERP doesn't work, like, their business can't function for the most part. You have some nuanced exceptions. I see once in a while these wholesalers or D2C guys going into B2B, but it's mostly guys that have like built their business around these ERPs, and it's all like you said, it's the complex pricing. And if you try and replicate the pricing in a Magento or Shopify or BigCommerce, it's almost impossible. You'd end up spending so much time and money trying to sync the pricing back and forth. I think the only way to really do it is real-time pricing, where it just displays, and I've done this before in a different way than you have at Sana. I'm using the Sana example. I'm sure there's others, but to me, that seems like a big barrier in this industry. And they either kind of have to like circumvent it, or maybe they just show like retail pricing, which doesn't really work. They end up just having this. Anyways, can you speak a little bit about that? Because I see that as like a big problem in still today in B2B right now.
Yeah, absolutely. But as you mentioned, I think it's vital to well, especially for B2B e-commerce front end, that you work with, let's say, real-time price and inventory information. Inventory is questionable.
Wherever the master system. Well, that's I think the key distinction is wherever your master system is for pricing, and it should be usually one system that handles pricing and inventory. That's real time, the information going to the customer.
Exactly. Yeah. Because if you don't have that, or if you're in a situation that you had a system in for, well, a legacy system that where data is synchronized and it goes everywhere, well, of course, that's more error prone, of course. There are a lot of things can happen there. And as a result, price changes, these kind of things are shown late or not updated. All these kind of problems you want to stay away from. And because it's your B2B solution will work if the information online is correct. The customer logs in, he sees information. Oh yeah, he can recognize that. He will place his order as a replacement from a traditional phone call or whatsoever, because that's what you want to achieve. You want to reduce your costs.
Why would you buy online if you can get a better price? I always say this, like, if you get a different price on the website and the phone, like you're already failing at this process.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but key elements is inventory, price information. That's absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have accurate inventory and shipment, because the inventory also drives the shipment, right? So where is it? What warehouse? Where's it going from? Yep. I do think that there's two problems here. I think they either need to do the real-time pricing inventory from the ERP, especially if it's really complex and they have, you know, thousands of price books, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like I see this in the ERPs with these companies that have been around for a while, and it's just really hard to change that. Or Tim, to your point, I think that we've talked about this for a while now, is they need to rethink their entire pricing structure and go to a tiered pricing.
I think that's what I've seen when I worked for Sana, when we were speaking with, let's say, new prospects or B2B companies who wanted to start using Sana. What's very interesting, if you start your first B2B e-commerce project, a lot of problems are surfacing at that point. Internal problems, the way you are structured, the way your data is structured. Your example with all the prices all over the place, all kind of.
I mean, I talked to a Fortune 100 company, and they were like, they don't even have real prices. It's basically whatever the sales rep says, and then they put it in the system. So it's just like, it's just chaos. It's like, it's just pricing chaos.
If that's the case, that's fine. But then
Fortune 100 company, it's like unbelievable.
but let's say that's the case. So okay, then the question is, okay, what should a customer who comes onto your site or a prospect, what price should he see? Okay, just what? So is there like a base price, or if he comes in via a special way, he gets already a certain discount, or because that question needs to get answered. It's not a technical question; it's a business question, and that based on, well, if you're having these kind of conversation, that leads to the really core problem, and that's often back in your backend processes or in your ERP, what you have to fix first before you can launch your B2B e-commerce solution successfully.
I think there's two ways to approach it. Like I said, is either you decide that you're going to make sure all the pricing's done in the ERP and the inventory is done in the ERP, and it's for a good reason. It has to be a good reason where you like that system and you have complexity, whatever. And then now you need the real-time integration. Or you say, look, we're not going to do that. We're going to maybe do list price and have tiered pricing, because e-com's pretty good for supporting tiered price, you know, or customer group pricing. I mean, e-com can support price books, these modern e-commerce platforms, but I just find that it's probably not going to end well if you're trying to support managing price books in the e-com platform and the ERP set, you know, and try and sync.
I mean, you know, the one of the things that I've always been working, you know, I've always been trying to make a pitch on this and talking about it from different angles, but I keep learning more as well. There are a lot of laws in place worldwide. This is not just US or the Netherlands, but worldwide to protect B2C, consumers and pricing, right?
Yeah.
So, if any three of us go into a store and we grab a shirt, it's supposed to be a price, or we have some
if they list it, I believe legally, if they mislist the price on the shelf, I've done this before. I was like, it said $10, you rung me up for 60, like that, then you have to sell it for me for 10. Because they listed it, right? I think that if they miss,
no, you're right, but the trend now, the time has passed, right, and things are changing. The trend now is that in B2B, those customers are now expecting to be treated like B2C customers more and more often, meaning that they're saying, well, what is the posted price? Because I want to get the same price that you do than you do, right? And that has to be the same for products and services. And so people are questioning like exactly how this is all done. There have been lawsuits, that people have launched, and some people have gotten settlements or won whatever, saying
you get a couple settlements, now you have a precedent and it could continue, right?
Exactly. So now it's like, well, why not just go to tiered pricing? Because then it's clear, right?
It's also an incentive. I think that if I was running a B2B business today, I would just make it an incentive program. You buy 100 grand a year, you get 20% off. You buy 200 grand a year, you get 30% off. And then just run promos based on the inventory you want to sell.
I mean, all people have to,
you want to get rid of some inventory, you run a promo on that.
Well, in New York, where I live, all you have to do is prove that you're treated differently because you're a man or a woman, you're black or you're white. And then you have these issues as well, and you bring these cases up. And it's really happened, it's way too often. So, people they should just make this easy for themselves, make it easy on the back end. Right?
Yeah.
Make this something that's.
We talked about this. How much money is being spent just maintaining custom price books?
Exactly.
And how much value is it providing the business? Versus had they just simplified and gone to a tiered pricing approach with an incentive program? Because now I say, I spent 100,000. If I spend 150, I can get an extra 10% off. Now maybe I want to spend 150, or I want to move my business more to you to get to the next price break.
Exactly. So, Jouke, I mean, I know that there are.
We just talked a lot. So what do you think? I mean,
what do you Oh, absolutely. But I think, well, the point is, so when you start doing B2B e-commerce, then these issues, if you have issues in that area, then they will surface. Then you have to discuss them, and then you can choose to, let's say, simplify this pricing model, for example. That's possible, of course. Indeed, you can also online. You can absolutely use this channel to start upselling, to really create an incentive for people. Indeed, okay, if you sell above a certain amount, you qualify for additional benefits or additional discount, and that you can, via a lot of ways, you can achieve that. Of course, on your website, you can do your marketing automation. You can use for that your newsletters, etc. But vital part there is that you have, let's say, the price info, and of course your customer profile in order. So if you know, okay, this is my customer, or it's in, maybe you have some segmentation running in the background, that you have, let's say, your premium customer. That's a segment you get, and then you might get a totally different experience online, or you have a specific journey, or the personalization part. I think that's also plays a more and more important role in e-com these days. So you can really tailor, let's say, the journeys for your types of customers you have, because I think it can be quite broad. So if we go back to the example of Axel Nobel, where we have these painters. So I think there we had three types of paint companies. So we have these indeed very small paint companies, 3 to 5 people. That was a segment. But also we had a very big clients, social housing clients. What they did, if they rented out apartments, they gave these, I think it was called paint packs or vouchers so to these new rental people. But these companies, I think they ordered in like I don't know, 50 to 60,000 orders a year. That was pretty common, but that was a totally different type of customer using the same e-commerce channel. But because we introduced segmentation, we could offer them a totally different journey. And
they have a different incentive. They want people to paint their apartments, right? Or that they have a different, value that they're getting for the product, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But they were also interested in the totally different types of products. So you can, of course, surface, we had a professional line and a consumer line. So these, you can just, put emphasis on different things in your catalog, in your journey, but also the element we focused on a lot was self-service for certain customers. So, we made a very transparent model there. So when you went into the My Account section there, normally you see things like your order history, maybe track and trace, and that's about it. Maybe your address information. But we extended it with a lot of additional information. So you could really see your balances. You could pay your invoices there. So we really extended it to a more self-supporting tool, which was really appreciated by that customer type specifically.
What's the third segment? larger businesses?
So we had social housing, we had the smaller painter company, and also we did B2C. That was part of it. That was also interesting. So, but of course, in a different journey. But we had a third one that was bigger painter companies. So that was.
What did they want? What were some of the features that may be different that they wanted? The larger segment.
I have to think what was specific for them. Not really sure. It's already a few years back, so I don't know by heart exactly. But
would it also be like a reseller, like a Home Depot in the US or something like that? Or what would be included in there and bigger than the ones you were talking about?
Yeah, to be honest, it's too much years ago, so I'm not sure.
That's okay.
Someone ordering a lot, they're probably a reseller, or they're just doing a ton of work, maybe some big contracting business or something. But yeah, so what other lessons? So we talked a little bit about real-time pricing, real-time inventory, how critical those are. What other lessons through this journey what were some of like the key things? It's like, you have to get this figured out. I agree, pricing and inventory is critical. If you don't have that figured out, it's probably just not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Product data is another big one. We see a lot of crappy product data, and it's like, no one wants to just see SKU price. They want more information.
Well, I'll ask a question related to what Isaiah is asking. What about like images and videos? Like, it's paint, right? But how much does that play into, something like AXA Nobel and what they needed?
Yeah, well, also there you see based on you see differentiation between the types of customers, what kind of information or let's say media they were interested in. So of course, a bucket of paint, a pack shot is not really very interesting to look at. Of course, it doesn't really add something. But if you can look at a video of what a certain type of paint can do on a certain surface, well, that's more interesting.
The application of the product in a video is really
exactly, yeah. But that can be for consumers. That's interesting to see what it does. Of course, color information was a very, very important part of our product information suite. But again, there for a professional, well, he knows that if you work with that on a daily basis, it's less interesting. So what we had for professional painters, that was more focused on, let's say, the safety regulations, the contents of the product, the really technical specifications were listed out. So there, again,
it's more like, here's how it could look cool in your house and how it might look nice, and then professionals like, here's why, because this is a very special product that you need, kind of thing. Or that's if you as a painter, if you landed a new job of new project, there could be some rules involved there, that you cannot use certain kind of paint in that specific building. So
you want to make
And the
sure
old lead
that
paint, I mean, that's gone, but I'm sure there's new regulations that I don't know, but yeah.
Well, did you use augmented reality to the extent where, like in a lot of consumer businesses, of course, you'll see the color up on the walls in your apartment, for example. Did you use that as well?
Yeah, we didn't integrate it in the e-commerce journey. We did have it back at AkzoNobel as just there were separate apps they had for consumers. So we had some content on the site referring to these apps to start using it, but we didn't integrate it in the journey. No.
So you could get to it. Yeah, sorry, I'm losing my track. Yeah, so going back to the things that you think are critical, I mean, it sounds like segmentation is kind of like underutilized. The way that you're talking about it, like I really think B2B companies need to really go back to the drawing board and say, all right, what do my types of customers want, and start to think about the experiences, because they're probably not all the same. Yeah.
I think it's also it should not be limited solely to the B2B e-com channel. I think it's much broader than that. You should just zoom out, look at who's your customer, what journey you want to offer these customers. So what are his needs, and there can be various touch points how you can interact with your customer in a good way. So well, segmentation plays there a very important role, of course. So there are definitely a lot of B2B customers. They do not want to receive a lot of newsletters or these kind of information. That's not interesting to them. Maybe they are more interested in different kind of interaction. Maybe like we touched on earlier, is having a sales rep, having a monthly call, or just reach out.
I think that human interaction is not thought about enough, in the sense that, all right, if I'm spending 100,000 of supplies with someone, or I'm making very large purchases, I probably want to talk to a human fairly regularly.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if I'm only making, $1,000 purchases, or, here and there over the course of a year, it's like, do I really want, like, is it worth it for me to talk to a human over a few $1,000s? Maybe nowadays, for a business, I don't think it is. No. Right? It's not enough money, unless, it's a very small business, maybe they care about that. But your business like Trellis, or, with GrowSpark, we wouldn't want to talk to someone for a $3,000 business order of supply, like that would be a waste of our time,
You'll have to send them to Tim. That's what you'll have to do.
But if I was spending 100,000, I'd be like, all right, we need to talk to someone and figure out, like, is this worth my, this is probably where I need to really evaluate and talk to a human. And even if I place buy online for 100,000, I'm probably going to spend time with a person for that.
Well, I'll give you a scenario that I just walked through with a client recently. When they have customers that come in for individual parts, almost at any price, and their parts can be in the thousands of dollars. They don't trigger anything that's like a contact or a pop-up that says, do you want to talk to a rep? When somebody is configuring, right, or they're putting together a large order, and even if it's a slightly lower dollar value than a single part, then they trigger it, and they basically will have a pop-up saying, do you want to talk to a rep? Do you want to be contacted after you place your order? These different messaging that comes up. And that works really, really well for them, because when they found out that when people order a $25,000 part, they already know what they're doing, right? They don't need any intervention. There's nothing that has to happen. When they're trying to put together an order, do something bigger, it's a completely different scenario, and they can often, build that order higher by having intervention.
I actually think SaaS has figured this out. Like the SaaS playbook, software as a service playbook, they know, almost every SaaS, the mature ones, that smaller orders, let's say under $500 a month, they don't want to talk. They don't involve sales reps, because they know it's not profitable to service, $6,000 a year or $10,000 a year. So they're usually not going to put a sales rep behind anything for, usually, well, the mature companies won't put any person behind it for less than $1,000 a month. Or whatever. I'm making them up the math a little bit, but it's usually that $1,000 to $2,000 a month. Then they're like, oh, like, this guy's spending 20 grand a year, recurring revenue, that could be hundreds of thousands over time. Let's get a sales rep, let's get account management involved, right? Let's upsell them and let's grow them. So, I mean, SaaS has kind of already figured this out. And I don't think it's that different in B2B manufacturing and distribution. Maybe the numbers are slightly different. Maybe they're even higher because now you have cost of goods sold. SaaS has higher margins. So if SaaS can't put a person behind it for less than 20 grand, how the hell is a manufacturer distributor going to do that profitably when their cost of goods is 12,000 of the 20,000? You know what I mean? SaaS cost of goods is like $50 for the servers to they don't, you see where I'm going with this? Like, I think that this has already been solved kind of,
Yeah, but I think that's indeed right. So there is like a threshold. So of course it depends on your product type or the type of company you're doing, but there is a threshold, like, okay, above a certain amount, then it's interesting to start talking about a sales rep or reaching out for contact or whatsoever. But I think it's very important if you do not reach that threshold. So if you're not too interested, let's say, or too interesting for the business, or not profitable to have, let's say, a one-on-one contact, still, I think it's very important to raise questions like, okay, what information does this prospect need or this customer need to make a buying decision? So does he have everything? Do we service all the product information? Do we have, let's say, all price information, etc., for him to make a buying decision? Because that's a very valid question here. So if that's not enough, you still lose a lot of money for these smaller customers, which would be a shame, of course.
And every big business started out small at some point, right? The guy that started ordering 20,000 of paint, eventually one of them becomes the guy that orders $1 million of paint. You know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
Over time, right? So
well, I was and I think this is a perfect example of what you're just saying there, Jouke, because there was a sales rep I was speaking with recently, and this is someone I've known for years, and they're still working for an LED company, a LED lighting company I used to work for years ago. And he said basically they went through all the steps that you would imagine. They had in-person meetings and phone calls, and then they used to have all the brochures and whatever. And they don't do any of that anymore. It's all digitized and whatever. But he said really the big shift in the last few years was that he used to go to a meeting like with his laptop, and then he'd show stuff on the screen that was basically like the website, right? Here is what our orders are. And then when clients realized that they were just looking at the website, he basically didn't even have to do that, right? And then knew what they wanted, and they were having this great communication, and they just kept updating the website, right? And now they just do it all there, and he touches base as needed. It's a great transition, from book and phone call, to all of this.
I would bet that there's some math that could be figured out per industry that, if you need a certain amount of human intervention per order for less than, X amount of dollars that a company's spending per year with you, you're losing, you're not going to be competitive, you're going to lose money. I mean, it's kind of happening in the auto industry.
Yeah.
Right? The auto industry, they go to distributors, and then they have the sales reps, and then the dealerships, right? The dealerships, right? Tesla's kicking their ass because they don't need dealerships. They don't need the middleman. You just go on the website and buy it, and they're selling $60,000 cars. So it's already happening in that industry. And might be in 5 years, Tesla might be so much further ahead margin-wise in these companies that I don't know if they'll ever come back to catch. They might be like just light years ahead of them, So I think that it's only a matter of time before this happens in all the manufacturing distribution industries.
I'm
I don't know what the math is, but I think there's some math there that could be figured out,
I'm with you on that. Look, and there's always, for anybody who has fear about their job disappearing or being like, whatever, I really would love, I would love to have the conversation with them, because usually what's happened in these cycles is that you're doing different things, or you're selling higher value items because those are the ones that.
Well, what's scary to me about this cycle, I'll tell you about that, because I do think there's going to be a lot of transition. I think there'll be a lot of new jobs. Is going to be there's bigger and bigger shifts where you have to adapt faster and faster. And it's
you do.
10 people, I'm not sure that people are prepared to adapt to new jobs that are going to be so radically different so quickly.
As our listeners know, I've been in e-commerce for 24 years, and there was no e-commerce when I was in college. Like, I say this over and over again because I think it's a valuable lesson. It didn't exist when I was in college. There was nothing.
I think it's more of a willingness to learn, right?
Yeah.
I think if you have the willingness to learn, then you'll do it. So I think that's the hardest. But that's something that's like, I don't know if that's almost an innate personality.
Life can be really tough. The economy is not that great right now. I am completely sympathetic to that. I mean, totally sympathetic. However, this all plays into what we're talking about here. There are opportunities at the same time that there are a lot of challenges. And, part of the opportunities are just continuing to upgrade B2B e-commerce experiences and getting more people to shop more often, more easily. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, did you ever find, going back to my question about this math, do you have a comment on that where you think like, hey, look, you got to really make it self-serve if the orders are below X dollars,
Me or Jouke?
Yeah, okay. I mean, we talked a lot. You didn't really get a chance to respond.
Oh yeah, sure. No worries. Yeah, I don't know about exactly the math you need to solve this. Of course, that you have to look at it by case basis, of course.
Yeah, it's going to depend on the company and the margins and their business model and whatnot. But I think there's some math there that,
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think what's happening more and more these days is, of course, direct to consumer as well, to put that in the mix. So if you're gonna do your traditional B2B e-commerce and you're gonna add B2C to that, so then it's also getting interesting, because then of course you don't want to get in conflicts with your B2B customers there. But so if I've done a few of these projects, and what you see happening then is, if you look at what pricing, so the list pricing of these for consumers, well, it's not really competitive with the prices your B2B customers do get, but you still offer this experience. So it's interesting to have this combination. It gives a lot of opportunity. Of course, you start collecting your customer data. You start learning from the end customer, which is interesting.
Do you think more people should do the full value chain all the way down to the consumer if they can?
Yep. Yeah. And from there, you can, just by start doing it, you can start off very light, just having, let's say, a subset of your catalog, open it up for your consumers for, let's say, a list price. You start doing it, and from there you can start learning, and you, based on the data, based on the, let's say, customer feedback, you can start developing your business model there. And I think that's an interesting thing. What's happening in the last years.
We are seeing a lot more B2B go B2C, and we're also seeing a lot more B2C open up B2B online. So we're seeing both on both sides. B2B starting to adapt more down to the B2C, and then B2C. I'm seeing some B2C companies, traditional B2C, like, CPG firms that sell skincare. They're realizing, hey, look, let's just, I don't want to sell to the distributor. I'm going to sell directly to the salons. And so I have customers, they're like, now you go to our pro site, they call it the pro site, and salons can buy from me to direct. I don't have to sell to the distributor anymore. And they get they can talk directly to the salons instead of another middleman going to the salon. So the reality is, I think that the middlemans are going to get squeezed. And if you don't have a strategy to add a lot more value as a middleman, or go direct down the chain, like the Tesla example, I think you're going to be in a bad situation in 5-10 years.
Absolutely. You have to start wondering, what's my added value indeed in the chain. If that's limited, then yeah, I think your days are counted indeed.
I mean, well, what's interesting is that the people who are in the middle really have a lot of expertise. And so for them, they should be able to do almost anything. They can go either way.
They should be creating those education programs, right?
Yeah.
The content marketing, the plumbing enablements, whatever. That's an example there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly. They've got so much expertise.
Well, that's what Justin King was saying. He's like, a lot of them, their core value is that they have really, really smart people in that industry.
Yep.
But I don't think they're doing enough with it from a asset creation standpoint. It's just all in their heads. You have to call them. And I don't think that's a sustainable business model. You know?
No, it's not. I mean, it really reminds me of all of these things that, used to be to the trade, right?
Yeah.
That's what they would say here in the US, right? You would have a sign saying to the trade, like you go to the door of a place and they're selling lighting supplies or they're selling furniture and it's not available to you as a consumer. Right?
Otherwise, they're just going to have to become consultants and their middleman business is going to turn from a distributor to a consultancy.
Yeah.
And that might be fine. But are they prepared for that transition?
Maybe not. maybe not.
Bye warehouse. Bye trucks. Bye.
Maybe not. We'll see.
Anyways, this was very interesting. I know we went way off topic, but it was helpful for me. Hopefully, it was good for you, Jouke. We're kind of running out of time, but we always like to give people like a last. What is your last remarks or advice, whether they're big or small or, to anyone in B2B?
Okay. A good question.
We're putting you on the spot. We're putting you on the
spot. I mean, look, it's a hard question, right? But, you can make it more specific or you can make it more general. We'll leave it up to you,
Yeah, sure. But like we touched on, I have a technical background. So if you talk about technology, technology is interesting, especially these days. If you look at where we are, so ecom, let's say 20 years old. Now we have this AI movement, which is really picking up now. And this space is
the chat
extreme. How quick now new developments are coming there.
Well, the thing is, I don't think you need to build AI anymore. You just integrate with ChatGPT.
Exactly. But that is becoming so easy. So that will open a lot of new opportunities for parties, existing parties in the e-commerce space, but also for new parties, because now very easily you can, if you're inventive, if you can come up with new ideas, you can very quickly deliver those. So let's see what will happen in the next years.
So you would recommend people look into ChatGPT and AI and see how they can apply it to their business, basically.
Absolutely. That's very interesting to see to just brainstorm what you can do with that technology, because
most B2B companies probably have a lot of data, right, in their ERP or wherever it is. They probably have a pretty large amount of data, especially like we talked about. A lot of these companies have been around for 50 years. Mm-hmm. They have 50 years of data. Some of it maybe is not online anymore, in a paper, but
I'm deep in this stuff too. I got to tell you, I like to know what's going on. I'm in ChatGPT, I'm in Midjourney, creating images. I'm doing all this stuff, trying to figure it out and just see what can we use it for right now. And I'll tell you, it's going to be useful.
I've used Jasper quite a bit. I think it's Jasper is it was actually before ChatGPT got popular. It's a content AI tool, and I was getting pretty good results having it write entire blog posts for me. So I would give it the concept, it would write the whole thing, and then I would go in and add the additional value that maybe I only knew or I knew better than most people, so that it didn't feel like just like some boring AI. And the results are pretty good. It saved me a lot of time. That's just basic content, right? So,
what I found interesting is I'll just tell our listeners this because I found it really interesting. I was talking to somebody who's an MBA student working on their degree at a business school, and she said that she wanted to experiment with ChatGPT about LinkedIn and her resume, and we did this together. She said, go ChatGPT, go to my profile, here's the link, and create a 1-page resume and a 2-page resume, one that's about marketing, one that's about this. And they were actually really good, right? I got to tell you, it took seconds, and all of a sudden she had 4 versions of a resume to edit, right? It was just really astounding how quickly it was done and how well it was done. I was impressed. There we are.
There we are. Yeah. Yeah.
There we are. I'll be replaced by a robot at some point.
We'll just have the 3 of us AI talking, as if it's a real conversation.
That's it. Jouke, this has been great. It's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast, and share it with your friends, tell everyone to join and have some fun and listen to us.
Yeah, we need a bigger European audience.
We do.
I think we have a pretty, US centric audience. So share it with the European side. It was great to have you, and I'd love to have you back, especially when maybe next time you get deep into another B2B project, you'll have new information for us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, guys, for having me, and nice meeting you, and all the best with the show.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.